Hello, welcome to World Oceans Week. My name's Anita, and we are here at San Elijo State Beach Campground. So let me share with you all where I'm standing. We're down fairly close to the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. And I'm standing right near that blue spot that you see in the sand, okay? And you also see a little bit of river coming out, and that river is part of our watershed that is meeting the open ocean water. Hey, boys and girls, this is not only an awesome campground, this is part of a marine protected area. So marine means water. What does protect mean to you? Just take a minute and think. If you were going to protect something, what does that mean? Okay, if you were thinking keep something safe, you're right. So our marine protected area is trying to keep an area of land and water safe. We want to see the little fish grow up to be big fish. And we would like to see all different kinds of fish and algae and plants. So you have a variety to look at when you come out and you go snorkeling, go underwater with your mask and flippers, and you can see all the biodiversity that this place has to offer. So boys and girls, now we're going to start our program about our sensational, stinging survivalists. All right, so boys and girls, what I want you to do, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil handy, that would be helpful because you could draw along with me during the program. So I'm going to share with you a video, and I want you to put your observation eyes on. Scientists are trained observers. So you're gonna be trained observers too, and you're gonna watch this video I'm gonna show you. And what I want you to do is I want you to tell me later what you notice. I want you to write down what these things make you wonder about. And maybe these animals remind you of something that you've seen a long time ago in your life. So if you're ready, I'm going to start this video. Okay, boys and girls, these animals are moon jellies. I'm going to give you 1 whole minute to observe them. So again, just jot down for yourself. What are you noticing about these animals? What are they making you wonder about? And maybe they remind you of something that you've seen before. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay, boys and girls, I'm dying to know what you observed. I think that they look like the top part of an umbrella without the handle, just drifting gently through the ocean. And I noticed that they kind of pulse through the water. What did you notice? Well, there's one thing we want you to know about. Some of us call these beautiful animals jellyfish. But did that animal swim like a jellyfish in the ocean? Did it swim like a normal fish? No, right? And if you've ever watched a fish breathe, they take water into their mouths and water crosses their gills and flows out of their body out by an operculum, a special little flap that protects the gills. So did these jellies have gills or an operculum? I didn't see any. So let's just remember that jellies are not related to the fish family at all. Jellies are related to other animals that sting, like our beautiful sea anemones that sit on rocks and pier pilots. Okay, boys and girls, I have a question for you. Do you all agree or disagree? And you can give me a thumbs up if you agree or a thumbs down if you disagree. Do you agree with me that animals roamed this planet before humankind? What do you think? Was there animals on this planet before you and I? Okay, if you agree with me, there must be some evidence left behind. So, what is that evidence that scientists find hidden in our Earth? They might come across a piece of it and dig it up. Can you think of what that evidence is called? If you're thinking of the word fossils, that's what I was thinking. That's what these scientists are finding hidden below our Earth's surface. And when they come across a small piece of bone, they can dust it off, gently dig it out of the earth, and then they can pour a little chemical on that bone. And that chemical helps them to read how old the bone is. Now, scientists, they like to talk to each other and they like to compare their notes. So, what these paleontologists have come up with over time is they have made a timeline of life on Earth. So, check this out. Here's a timeline of life on Earth, boys and girls. And if you look over to the left side of the screen, can you see the number 500? Well, that's going to be the oldest part of this timeline, 500 million years ago. And we gave this period in time on Earth a name. We call it the Cambrian period. Now, a little sooner on this timeline, there's the Triassic period, 200 million years ago. And then as we move to the right on the timeline, even sooner in the Earth's time, we have the Quaternary period. And the Quaternary period is only 1.8 million years ago. So I'm kind of wondering, who came first on this timeline? Do you think it was humankind? Do you think it was dinosaurs? Or do you think it was the jellies? I'm kind of curious to know what you think. So maybe if you're sitting next to somebody, why don't you guys compare notes? Turn and talk to your neighbor and discuss who you think came first on this timeline. I'll give you about half a minute to think about it. Okay, boys and girls, I'm wondering what you're thinking. Let's see what the answers are. Take a look at your screen. If you guessed jellies came first on the timeline of Earth, you are correct. The jellies were swimming around our oceans 500 million years ago. That's incredible. And then I wonder who came next. You might have recognized that word, the Triassic period. You're right. That's when the dinosaurs roamed our planet. And then, of course, some form of humankind roamed the planet 1.8 million years ago. So that's the timeline of Earth, life on Earth. Now, I'm kind of wondering, I have been to a museum before. How many of you have gone to a museum? Now, there's a lot of cool museums out there. There's airplane museums. There are natural history museums. There's art museums. My favorite's the Natural History Museum. That's where they house a lot of plants and animals. So when they collect all the bones to one complete dinosaur skeleton, they might build it in the museum. Have you ever seen that before? So that was my proof that dinosaurs really did live their life on Earth. But what about jellies? Do they leave a fossil behind? I think you should turn to your neighbor again and discuss this. Can jellies leave a fossil? All right, boys and girls, I'm going to share with you a fossil of a jelly. But first, let me tell you how that happens. Do jellies have bones? No, jellies don't have bones, but they're able to leave a fossil. And this is how it happens. How many of you have ever got to go to a beautiful beach like this and build a sand castle in the sand? So you have to get a little bucket of water and you had to push that sand around to mold it into your beautiful castle. And while you were playing with that sand, you probably thought that those grains of sand were pretty small. And you're right, they are small. But what really happens is the big ocean waves, they crash on the shore, and the heavier, bigger particles of sand, they get left on the beach. And when the wave crashes and then retreats back out to sea, it's actually carrying really, really tiny pieces of sand with it. And those pieces of sand keep going out to sea until they finally sprinkle down to the sea floor. So there are types of sand called mudstones, siltstones, and did you know there's even clay on the bottom of the sea? So if a jelly lives its life out and the jelly gently falls to the sea floor and it falls in just the right kinds of sediment, it will leave a jelly stamp. Would you like to see a fossil of a jelly? Okay, I thought you would. So let me share that with you. Now, if you look closely on the top right part of your screen, you will see it. Now look closely, boys and girls. You'll see little pieces of that jelly radiating out. You might even see some of these artifacts in that picture. So this fossil was found in the year 2007. And that's pretty recent in time, right? But that's how scientists were able to date the jellies living to 500 million years ago. All right, so over this period of time, we have lost 5 animals to what we call a mass extinction. So boys and girls, a mass extinction is when we lose one type or one species of animal and they all disappear from the planet forever. We never get them back. So I can think of a couple of cuties that we've lost. How many of you have ever heard of the dodo bird? All right, we must have some budding paleontologists out there. And another cute little animal was called the woolly mammoth. Have you heard of that animal before? Well, unfortunately, we have lost them to our earth forever. But the jellies, they are still drifting around our oceans. And that tells me one thing. They must be really, really adapted to life here on our planet. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about these adaptations. These are things that help a jelly survive better in its habitat. So pull out your piece of paper and grab your favorite pen and let's draw a jelly. All right, boys and girls, I'm going to draw the top part and I'm going to label my parts for you. So like I said earlier, I thought it looked like the top part of an umbrella. And this top part has a name. It's called the bell. And if you could touch the bell, what do you think it would feel like? Well, if you're thinking a little bit slippery and a little bit squishy, you are correct. Because the bell, it doesn't have any bones, right? What supports it is it's made of 98% H2O. And that's what we call water. So you can label your jelly with H2O. All right, now, when you were watching that video, did you see any of these on our jelly friend? No, right? We didn't spot any of those. But the jellies, they do have an eye spot. So I'm going to put a dot at the base of my bell. And I'm going to spell that out here for all of you. Eye spot. I'll leave that up there for a second. So you're probably wondering, well, if they don't have regular eyes, what does an eye spot do? So let's learn about this together. I'll do it first, and then I want you to try it at home. Okay, I'm gonna get my hat out of the way a little bit, and I'm gonna close my eyelids. And the whole time we're doing this, I'm gonna keep my eyes closed. Then I'm gonna cover my eyes really well with my hand. And then I have the sun. You might have a light or a window that you can turn towards. So I'm going to turn towards the sunlight up here, and I'm going to keep my eyelids closed and then take my hand away and back, away and back, away and back. And notice I do it nice and slow, and I cover my eyes all the way. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to observe what that eye spot is noticing for the jelly. Okay, how many of you out there noticed that when you did this, it got kind of dark? And then when you did this, you saw light. Sometimes I see a little bit of orange behind my eyelids. So that's what a jelly is noticing about his world. So let's say Ruffles here turns around and gently makes his way down to the sea floor or near the sea floor. What do you think he's going to notice? Is it going to be dark or light? If you guess dark, you're right. And then as he makes his way up to the surface and the sun is shining through the ocean, penetrating the water, what is Ruffles going to notice then? If you said it's going to be bright for him, you're correct, because the sun near the surface can penetrate the ocean for a little bit of a distance. And that's how the eye spot works. All right, we have some more great adaptations. What about breathing? We know he doesn't have gills. Did you see a nose on our jelly? No, jellies don't have noses, but they do breathe, and it's interesting. They have very thin skin, boys and girls, and they can breathe oxygen that's dissolved in the water right through their skin. So I'm going to write the word oxygen like a scientist. I put a O, a big O, and a 2. So that's 2 molecules of oxygen. So can you think of another animal in this planet that breathes through its skin? Yes, frogs. Lots of amphibians can do that too. So our jelly is very special that way. If you could take a small piece of his skin and look at it under a microscope is a tool that scientists can use to look at really tiny things. So you would see these cells, and it's only a thin layer of cells, and that's what allows that oxygen to just sneak by. But can you and I breathe through our skin? Nope, because if you looked at your skin under a microscope, your skin looks more like this, many, many layers thick. So oxygen just can't make its way through. Okay, now let's give our jelly a way to capture food. What's the next thing he needs? I'm sure our jelly's getting hungry by now. Well, I'm going to draw it on mine. I'm just going to put 4 there. Can you guess what those are called? All right, if you said tentacles, you are right. I'm going to spell that for you. Just like the number 10, and then tentacles, tentacles. Okay, now, if we could break out that microscope and look at a small piece of those tentacles, you would notice that there's these clusters of small structures on the tentacle. So add some dots to your tentacles. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Now, if you could look really closely at what those dots look like under a microscope, you would see a capsule, and you would see something that looks like a spring inside. And then on the top, it has a trigger hair. And I'm going to spell that name. It starts with a C, but the C is silent. This is called a nidocyst. Okay, now these nidocysts sit there on the tentacle. And then if an unknowing fish or other type of sea creature swims through the tentacles, uh-oh, what happens? I think he triggered that trigger hair on the nidocyst, and then this is what happened. The nidocyst opens up, and now this spring-loaded thing gets released. We're going to call that a nematocyst. And the nematocyst is special because on the tip of the nematocyst, you guessed it, there is marine toxin. I'm going to write that out here. Marine means water. Toxin. So how many times do you guys think that our fish got stung? Do you think it was just once? Or do you think it was many times? If you said many, you are correct. They got stung many, many times. And what it does is this toxin is kind of a special toxin. It's a neurotoxin. It acts on our fish's brain. So our fish is now going to go to sleep, and it's not going to wiggle and fight its way around on those tentacles. So now that the fish is quiet, the jelly knows it's time to eat. But I'm curious, do you think the jelly has a knife, fork, and spoon and can cut his dinner up neatly and eat it like you and I? No, they don't have that in the ocean, do they? So he must have one more adaptation to help it feed. Can you guess what part that is? I'm going to hold up Ruffles here, and I want to see if you can guess what body part might help him bring his food up to his mouth. All right, if you were thinking of these, you're right. These are called oral arms. Boys and girls, oral is just a fancy word for mouth. So these are mouth arms that helps push the food up under the bell to its mouth. So let's put some oral arms on our picture. So I'm going to make them thick and beautiful because they are. They're very frilly and beautiful. And I'm just going to shade mine in. I'm wondering what your pictures look like out there. I'm going to write the word oral, O-R-A-L, and arms. Oral arms. Okay, boys and girls. Jellies are pretty simple animals, but all these adaptations have helped them survive for millions of years. That's pretty incredible, right? Okay, well, I have some more adaptations to share with you. Let's take a look at some more jellies. Do you think they come in all the same size? Ruffles here. If you could measure Ruffles across the bell from end to end, Ruffles is probably a little less than a ruler in length. So a ruler, remember, is 12 inches. So he's about 8 to 10 inches, I would say, across. But oh no, jellies come in all sizes. So check this out. Okay, boys and girls, this big jelly in the middle of the screen, its name is lion's mane jelly. And the bell, if you could measure your dad's arms, the length of his arms from fingertip to fingertip, usually a man's arms are about 6 feet across. Well, lion's mane bell is over 7 feet across. So if I hold my arms out for you, lion's mane's got this incredibly large bell. And his tentacles reach to 100 feet behind him or a little more. So lion's mane here, it likes cold water, really cold water. Have you ever gone for a swim in Oregon or Washington or Canada? Brr. So it's very adapted for cold, cold waters. And it's pretty adapted to catch fish. It's a big jelly. Now let's look at something small. Take a look at your own pinky fingernail. Yep, that's pretty small, right? So glance down at the bottom left of your screen. Can you see that little jelly hiding down there? That jelly's name is irukandji. Boys and girls, irukandji doesn't live near me. It lives on part of the Great Barrier Reef. Have you ever heard of Australia? Okay, so I wonder what kind of water Australia has. Well, on the Great Barrier Reef, this little animal roams, and even though it's small, it's mighty. Its marine toxin is very, very potent. So you have to be careful when you travel. When you go to a new strange beach, who should you talk to first before you go out for a swim? Can you tell me who works at the beach that protects people in the water? Yep, you want to visit the lifeguard. And the lifeguards love it when you come up to them because they will help you and teach you what's on the beach. Okay, boys and girls, we're going to look at one more really cool adaptation. Now, this adaptation, it's called bioluminescence. Now, that's a really big word. So I'm going to put that word up here for you. You don't have to write it down, but I want you to just look at it. Let's break this word down. Bio means living, and luminous means to light up. So some animals, they are able to produce light inside their bodies. So they produce it in their bodies and then it goes out to the world. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of Ruffles' cousins. He has cousin jellies that's called comb jellies. All right. Now we have two comb jellies up on our screen. The comb jelly on the left, it has a funny name. It's called red belly comb jelly. And the comb jelly on the right is called spotted comb jelly. Now, boys and girls, in the ocean, when sunlight comes through the water, sunlight travels in wavelengths, okay? So the wavelength of the color red can't really go too far through the water. So if an animal is wearing red, it's trying to match its background. What do we call it when an animal's really good at hiding in its background? If you're thinking of the word camouflage, you are right. Red belly is a pro at being camouflaged. It doesn't want to be seen. It wants food to drift by it, and then it can grab the food, or at least bump into the food. Now the spotted jelly, that jelly is putting out little flashes of blue and green. Can you see that on the screen? And boys and girls, the wavelength of blue and green light can travel really far distances in the ocean. So that tells me red bell or spotted jelly is trying to attract food towards it. So let's say you and I were little shrimpies and we're drifting through the ocean, minding our own business, and we see this beautiful blue-green twinkling light in the distance. Well, we might try to make our way over to that pretty light, and uh-oh, we might get trapped in the tentacles of a jelly. And that's how some animals use bioluminescence. Okay, boys and girls, now we as humans, we can do a lot of good in the world, and we can do some kind of negative human impacts. So can you think of an animal that likes to eat jellies for food? I wonder what animal that is. All right, if you said sea turtle, let's see. I'm gonna pull up a picture for you. Yep, there it is. Up on the left, it's a leatherback sea turtle. And boys and girls, they love to eat jellies for their snacks. They'll swim thousands of miles through the ocean to find a jelly. So jellies play an important role in the ocean's ecosystems. Now there's another animal you might never have met before. This animal is called a mola mola. And the mola mola can get large. And it has kind of a cute little round mouth. And it can just kind of swim up to a jelly and siphon it in just like a vacuum cleaner. So mola mola also needs to feed on jellies. That's the way it's designed. But do you think they ever get confused? Oh yeah, what do humans put in the water that might confuse our two friends here? Well, let me share this picture with you. This is our friend, Miss Erica. She's an amazing scuba diver, and she found these two things drifting in the ocean that don't belong in the water. So let's take a look at what's in her right hand or on the hand on the right in the picture. What does that look like? Is that a jelly? Nope, it's not. That's actually a plastic bag. But it really looks like a jelly, doesn't it? So take a look at this turtle. There's a turtle behind her left arm. It looks like a little disc, a little dark disc coming towards Miss Erica in the water. So yay for Erica. I think she saved that sea turtle this day from getting confused and eating that plastic bag. So boys and girls, what happens when animals eat these plastic bags? The bag will get into their stomach and it kind of lines their stomach, okay? And then the turtle or the mola mola might add food to its stomach, but uh-oh, the plastic bag is there. So the body can't absorb the nutrients that should come from the food it eats afterwards. So essentially the animal starves. Okay, and we wouldn't want our ocean friends to starve, would we? So how can you and I do something good for this planet and keep our turtle friends and our mola molas safe from harm? Do you have any ideas? I think this is a good time to turn to your neighbor and discuss how you might help keep our ocean friends safe. Right. There's a couple of ways I can think of, boys and girls. Number one, let's not use plastics. We want to keep plastic of any kind out of the ocean because plastic hardly ever breaks down. It just gets smaller and smaller, and smaller and smaller animals eat it. So plastic just doesn't seem to go away. So if you're visiting a park, you're at school, you're camping, would you be a good person and pick up a piece of trash, even if it wasn't yours, and put it in the garbage can with a lid so the wind can't blow it out? Well, if you're that person, awesome, because lots of people are always watching you and they will also start to pick up trash. You'll spread that goodness throughout the world. Now, another thing that we all do is we are all putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We're heating up our atmosphere by not turning our bedroom lights off, by not turning our computers off, by driving our cars around in factories that are making our favorite toys, and the burning of fossil fuels. So by warming our ocean planet, adding that excess CO2 to the atmosphere, boys and girls, that atmosphere is heating up. And the ocean is trying to pull that heat into it. But guess what? Jellies, guess what their favorite kind of water is? Do you think it's the really, really cold water? Or do you think they like warm water? You're right, they like warm water. So what can happen if we get too many warm spots in our ocean? The jellies will overpopulate. So that's one more amazing adaptation that these animals have. So let's talk about the jelly life cycle. How many of you have seen or learned about the life cycle of a butterfly? Can you think of all the different parts of a butterfly's life cycle? Okay, I can think of the beautiful butterfly. And before that, it might have been hanging from a tree branch as a chrysalis. And before that, it was crawling on the ground as a little beautiful furry animal. And then before that, it was an egg. So each part of the butterfly's life cycle, it changes drastically. And we call that metamorphosis. So let's study about the jelly's life cycle. Okay, so you don't have to draw this. You can just look at this. So out in the open ocean, we might have an adult jelly. And these adult jellies, we call them adult medusas. And these adult medusas, they might be a boy or a girl. And they sprinkle into the open ocean these little tiny peppery looking things, and we call those gametes. And somehow the ocean currents will push these gametes together, and that's when we will get a jelly egg. So now the jelly egg, it doesn't stay near mom and dad. Nope. And the ocean carries that egg away. And then the egg, it's trying to survive in the open ocean too. So the egg has an adaptation. It grows cilia around it, which it makes it look like little bits of hair. And now that it's changed shape, we call it planula larva. And it will drift around the ocean as a larva for a time, and then it will fall to the sea floor. Now, hopefully, it falls on something hard, like a rock or a sunken ship, or maybe even a pier piling, or maybe even something plastic at the bottom of the sea. Once it attaches to that rock, boys and girls, it's going to take another change in shape. It's going to go from this little hairy planula larva to this shape, which is called a polyp. So now the polyp is attached and it's reliant on food drifting by its body. Can you see those finger-like projections? It wants to hold those finger-like projections out in order to capture small food drifting by called plankton. Now, if it's successful at catching food, the polyp will grow. And what the polyp does is it begins to do this thing called budding. It's actually cloning itself, boys and girls. Now, once it clones itself, this structure gets kind of heavy, and then it'll shake off these buds, and then the buds change shape, and it becomes now what we call an ephyra. Now, the thing I want you to really notice about what I'm holding up is how many clones did this polyp make? How many clones? Can you count them? If you're seeing the number 3, you are right. 3 ephyra came from my budding polyp. But in real life, boys and girls, it can clone at least 10 times. So from one jelly polyp, you guessed it, we can get 10 ephyra. All right, now these beautiful ephyra, you can see them with your own eye. Maybe if you visit an aquarium that raises jellies. These ephyra, they're now gonna change shape too. Now they are gonna turn into a really small jelly, okay? And those of you that are young out there, you might look like mom and dad, but you're not quite an adult. So we have a nickname for you. We call you juveniles. And that's what we call our little jelly, a juvenile jelly. So we went from being ephyra, the PH sounds like an F, ephyra to juvenile jelly. And then how many of you remember what we called the adult? We called it an adult medusa. Adult medusa. Let me fix my S there. All right, so I want to have a little fun with this. I'm going to show you one picture real quick, and you'll see a nice picture of that life cycle. Okay, up there at the top, you see the adult medusas, and then the gametes come together, make an egg. And then over to the right, you can see the planula larva, kind of fuzzy. And then down attached to the bottom, you see the polyp phase that looks kind of like a sea anemone. And then you see the budding polyp. And then off the budding polyp, you see the ephyra. and then the ephyra grow into an adult medusa. So boys and girls, if the conditions in the ocean are just right and nice and warm, we could end up with a smack of jellies. Yep, that's what they call an overpopulation of jellies. So what we want to do is we want to have jellies out there. We just don't want to have an overpopulation of jellies. They can cause a lot of problems for us. So boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed learning about our sensational stinging survivalists today. I sure had fun with you. And just keep enjoying our World Oceans Week. And don't forget to tune into our live dive later on this week. All right, boys and girls, have a great day out there. Thank you for visiting us.